Black and Tan is a podcast that begins each episode with a discussion of a type of beer that relates to the intricacies of today's fast-moving world. Hosted by Pedro Silva, an African-American advocate for social equity, and Alan Ohashi, a Japanese-American with a passion for cross-cultural engagement, the show offers insightful discussions designed to inspire personal change. Through engaging conversations, Black and Tan offers listeners practical advice and eye-opening perspectives on how to better understand others.
Thank you, Sophia, and welcome to our podcast, Black and Tan. You're joining myself, Alan Ohashi, and my friend and colleague, Pedro Silva. And this is episode 5 of our series. And last time we talked a little bit about how beer brands had kind of changed their logos to kind of meet up with the local culture. In 2016, Budweiser changed their logo to be America Beer after Trump was elected, and then eventually it kind of went back to normal. But the idea here is for us to talk a little bit about, what things can we do to maybe change the world or change society so that it becomes more equitable and fair and more on an even keel. And so the one I've always suggest, the simplest one is just go out and meet people and go meet them where they're at. So rather than waiting for people to come to you, how much effort more does it take to go see them? So you got any examples of being intentional about reaching out to people unlike yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't have a choice. It's really easy for me to run into people not like myself everywhere I go. So in this context, that's just an everyday occurrence. If I walk out the door, I'm gonna encounter somebody not like myself. If I go upstairs and see my wife, I'm gonna encounter somebody that's not like myself. So in that regard, I don't really have to think about it as much as I might have to sell other people on the value of it. And what I can say about the value of engaging people that have different experiences and different backgrounds, different ways of seeing the world, is if you are really strong in your convictions and you're able to listen to other people, you'll get stronger in certain convictions because they've been able to kind of go through the crucible of having a challenging conversation. But on the other end, if you're holding some ideas that are limiting beliefs that aren't serving you, aren't serving your community, and not making the world a better place, having a conversation with someone who thinks differently than you or has a different experience will make you see the weaknesses in your position. And if you're an intelligent person, in my summation of things, if you're an intelligent person and you learn something, you'd want to incorporate that better knowledge. So just by engaging with people who can challenge you always makes you better. And unless you're just focused on your ego and you just want to stay stuck in whatever illusions that make you feel better. But in my life, I've changed so much, and it's because I've talked to people that weren't like me. I will say I had when I came into the United Church of Christ, which was more open to people from the LGBTQ community. But before that, I didn't really have that many people in my life that were from that community, or aspects of that community. So I had to be intentional. I had some friends that were gay and lesbian that I kind of met through seminary and stuff, but outside of that context, I didn't. So I actually reached out to somebody that was transgender, and I just said, hey, I was like, I know I don't want to sound like an ignorant person, but I probably am going to, but I really do want to get to know you and kind of just hang out with you. And I was like, I know that sounds kind of awkward. And if somebody told me they always want to hang out with a Black person and get to know them, maybe I don't know. I've had that experience too. So I just said, I just like to get to know you and talk to you. And I did. And I was like, just learned a whole lot. And I just was like, okay, cool. Thanks for, and actually I had a friend who was transgender here. Hysterically, I did not know. Like I had no idea they were transgender. And I knew they cared about transgender issues, but I never knew they were transgender until I was with them one day. And then they said that they were. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize that. And I have other friends that are transgender now too, but I didn't know. I had to get to know that community more because, they were in the shadows more for a long time. And sadly, the way things are going, some people will probably feel like they got to be more in the shadows, which I think this is long, and I'm sorry for my long answer, but I do have feelings about it. Is I think that any person who knows what it's like to be oppressed and to be relegated to the back alleys of social life, I feel like just out of principle, you should support any person who's trying to live fully into who they are when you come from a community that has your rights have been denied. Like I don't understand how people can fight for their rights and then just not care about other people's rights. That makes no sense to me.
Yeah. I suppose that's true. I also just am always having to run into people who are unlike myself. But I think I'm not as good at this sort of engaging with people and mentioning, like you say, I just want to get to know you better. I'd say that as for myself, it's more about the context of things, and usually it'll be people who I'll run into in social settings or in work settings. But I think it's we have talked about this in the past about how we're having to how we're socialized to having to be in both worlds. And I don't know what it was like for you, but for me, it was like over the top learning how to live in both worlds. And so it wasn't until I was older that I would notice, like sitting in a Starbucks, all the people in Starbucks are all white people,
Mm-hmm.
catching people's eyes. And
Mm-hmm.
people would be looking over, just, I don't know why the reaction is. Well, I will find if I see another Asian person someplace, we will notice each other. And,
Mm-hmm.
in a in a context where we're like the only two people who are in the space.
Right.
Mm.
I mean, it's just like by virtue of where we live, we're just in that's our circumstances. But I think that one of the things that our community, the Boulder County area, probably needs to have more intentionality when it comes to not the, I mean, I can't say the city or the community, but the people. I mean, because a lot of times when you don't have people from a lot of different backgrounds, it's easy to tell yourself how open you would be because you don't have to have it tested. But then once you get around somebody who tests your professions of what you say you believe, then it gets harder. And there's just like um, probably more opportunities for people to do that than they know in this community to stretch themselves. And yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, like I said, I don't have to think about it because I can just walk out the door every single day. I'm gonna have that kind of experience. But but I think like it is enriching for folks to get to know yourself better because whenever you learn something about somebody else, you also learn about yourself.
Yeah,
So
I was at a Denver Art Museum event here about Camp Amache, the internment camp in southeastern Colorado. And
mhm,
of course, at the Denver Art Museum, this is during the day, so it was mostly like people like me retired, but mostly Caucasian people at this event. And
mhm,
so I made it. So I decided, okay, I'm going to just go around and talk to as many people as I can. And I was, I would just, there was a lunch line, so I would just try to talk to as many people who were waiting in line with me, or during the breaks, talk to people, just go find some person because I didn't know anybody there anyway. And
mhm,
um, I was surprised at the kind of the standoffishness that people had, wondering
mhm.
who is this guy, and I know this is an event that's about Japanese, but why is he talking to me, or what interest does he have in me? And so people would actually just sort of nod and then just walk off after I
Right.
That's something
Well,
that was interesting.
yeah, that's unfortunate. And I don't want to make an excuse for people, but I think that a lot of our society right now is getting increasingly insular, and people are learning how to have these things that they think are experiences in an isolated context. So, for example, like we spend a lot of times on our phones, right? And now even people can watch movies, read books, do all this stuff in this one device in the palm of their hands, have conversations, talk to people, and it's all kind of centralized in their own, connected to their own body. So as if the whole world is an extension of them, you know, and they get to set when they engage and when they don't engage. And when somebody starts talking to them out of nowhere, it's almost like somebody breaking into their world, you know, their little insular world that they have. And it's like, who are you? Where'd you come from? I didn't conjure you up on my magic little rectangle in my hand. How did you get in my life? You know, so I think that uh people are, you know, kind of getting programmed. And a lot of us, man, we're lazy as hell. Like, I mean, I'm sorry to say it that way, but it's kind I don't know if it's lazy or super efficient, but we tend to adapt to the technologies and the different things of the world, but we still use them in the same ways that people had to use back in survival, severely dangerous days. So we're I don't know, we're constantly trying to keep ourselves safe by shutting stuff out, you know, and controlling our environments. And when you live that way, you experience more threats. And a lot of us, we don't think about it, but a lot of us use our brains to assess threats more than anything else. And anything different just seems like a threat until the different things proves itself otherwise, which is unfortunate if you're the different one. Because then you gotta always prove that you're not trying to you know, kill somebody just because you look different. But the brain just does that.
Yeah. No, I was also thinking about, I don't know about you, but when I first came to Boulder, I was at one of the department stores, and I was looking around, and I was noticing there was this same store clerk who was kind of always on my shoulder or was always over here where I happened to be. And what went through my mind was that she was following me around because she thought maybe I was going to steal something.
Hmm.
Um, I didn't think about that until after I had paid for my stuff and walked out of the store. It's no longer in business in town here, though. But then I saw on TV, maybe a documentary. It was uh, people of color and white people were kind of comparing their experiences about being followed around in a store. And so the
Hmm.
reporter asked the white person, so and maybe it was even a setup like what would you do segment or something.
Hmm.
Uh, someone was someone was following you around the store. What did you think? And the person said, "Oh, I thought she was just very friendly and very helpful, and she wanting to know where if I was finding everything okay." And then
Hmm.
they talked to the black guy, and was just totally the opposite. Well, I think she thought
Hmm.
steal something, and I think she was following me around just to be sure she'd be able to have an eye on me and catch me if I
Yeah.
did something wrong. And so to me, it's just interesting on perceptions and how is it, what could
Right.
you do to, for example, like now you go into a department store, not only they're not just greeters, but they're also called asset protection crew or asset protection staff, which is
Hmm.
trying to catch people before they walk out the door without their receipt or something.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I used to have a lot of that growing up, but I don't even think about it now. I mean, I know even if a person says, "Oh, are you finding everything okay or whatever?" I just go, "Yeah," you know, and I don't even care if they think I'm stealing or if they really are just trying to do their job and find out if I found everything okay. I just kind of like don't even put energy into it because I used to have. I mean, I had experiences where people clearly thought I was stealing, And especially when I was younger, they would just assume that. And I would just say, oh, like, I'm not stealing anything, and that's what you're wondering. And then I'm like, oh no, no, I'm not thinking that. I say, oh, okay, well then thanks. I'm just walking around, you know. And man, I don't. It's like um, I'm old enough now, and I've had enough experiences that I don't even entertain being shocked. I'll just be like, yeah, what's the point? Like, what am I gonna get shocked for? You know, I just don't even think about it, generally speaking. But I did, it took me, it was just a few, maybe about 4 or 5 years ago where I like, it just turned off. I actually was trying to do a project to try to feel the experience. I wanted to go to this country called Mauritius, where it's supposed to be super diverse. And I was like, oh, what would it be like just walk around with my family and not, because I used to always think like, are people looking at me and my family all the time? And I didn't want to think that, but it was just in my head. And then I just said, I'm gonna try to create a project where I can hang out in a super diverse place where people won't be looking at my family. And things didn't work out for me to do that project. But just the thought of the project and working on the project and stuff like that, I think it did something to my brain because like after that, I just stopped paying attention or caring. And one day, not too long after um I had finished working out my plan for the project and had been meditating on it and everything, apparently some like people were staring at my wife and my kids, and my wife was like, but it used to be if I said, "Oh, those people are staring at us," she would go, "Oh, how do you know they're staring at us?" And I would be like, "Oh, I saw them." And then all of a sudden she was like, "Hey, those people are staring at us." And I was like, "Oh yeah." And she was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Oh, I didn't even notice." And she said, "Yeah, they're staring at us right now." And then I was like, "Yeah, who cares?" I'm just like, I don't care anymore. Because it's like, you know, I think sometimes you get to a place in life where you're just like, who cares? And I feel like that's how I've gotten. I was that way, then I went to caring a person that cared, and now I'm getting old enough again that I'm like, who cares? How much longer am I gonna be here anyway? Like,
So the other thing I was thinking is that, seems like all this caring and sharing comes up when there's some kind of crisis that happens or, thoughts and prayers when someone gets, schools get shut up or whatever. But
mhm,
to me, the latest one is Pope Francis passing away here on Easter or the day of
mhm,
Easter, depending on your time zone. And all of a sudden, even the hardcore news broadcasts like Fox and MSNBC and
mhm,
CNN, that's all they're talking about
mhm,
is is the Pope and what would the Pope do or what would Pope Francis do? And
mhm,
people are being thoughtful about he being kissing peasants' feet. The Pope in recent times who has been more amenable to dealing with the people on the fringes.
mhm.
So I don't know, seems like this lasts for a while and then all of a sudden everyone kind of
Goes back to business as usual. Yeah, he was a dope pope. Like he was a cool guy. Like from what I could tell. Um, and I think that he left a good example, and hopefully whoever becomes pope next, it's kind of like he went. Who knows? The world seemed to be leaning more liberal when he was elected, but now it's got that pendulum swing going to the conservative end. So the new pope might be gangster. The new pope might just come out and be like, everybody's going to hell unless you believe what we believe. That's it. Francis was wrong. Liberal, like left wing popey, like they might snap, might get a cuckoo pope. So we'll see. Who knows? But I mean, I'm glad that there's a lot of memes and other things of Pope Francis and the sweet things he did and the ways that he was showing up. I'm glad that that's a thing right now. And we'll see how long it lasts. I just kind of I've been working on this thing called being a non-anxious presence. And I was really into that for a while, then I kind of like lost track of it, but I got back into it where I'm thinking like the best thing I can be for the world is to not be anxious. to like be less anxious or not anxious at all. And if I get around anxious people and also stuff like that, I'll just kind of, take it on, not take it on like I'm trying to, but if it gets on me, I'll just go walk it off and shake it off and empty the world of that little bit of anxiety. And like I feel like the Pope kind of held that like less anxious space, but he named things, but he didn't seem like he was all about trying to add to the uh the anxiety pool that we have going on. So I'm trying to do that, like just be less anxious. And well, I'm not even that anxious anyway, but just like less than what I normally am. And then invite other people to be less anxious as well. That's kind of how I'm making my choices right now because there's so much stuff going on. If you're gonna be tapped out of your brains if you like if you let everything get to you. It's like a roller coaster, man, and you can't get off.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, I've been kind of not really studying up on Pope Francis, but I just kind of reading a few things about his life, and I had remembered, some things that he did when he was in Argentina, and just his life as just an early Catholic cleric of some sort. And
Mhm.
he, Pope Benedict, he was supposed to be kind of the transition pope, and then Pope Francis ended up being kind of another transition pope. He was one of the older guys too, and
Mhm.
I don't know, he he can only do so much. And when he came
Right.
to speak to the U.S. Congress, I remember watching that on television. I think he got had people's ears for a moment, but obviously that didn't really resonate other than, oh, where the Pope is here, and glad to meet you. And it's it just ended up falling on deaf ears. At one level, I saw that Trump and Melania are going to the Vatican for the funeral. So
Oh, snap. I don't know what's gonna happen when they go out there, man.
yeah,
If there's any holiness to that place, I don't know what's gonna happen. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I'm like I said, I'm like increasingly being like, okay, man. Uh I was talking to a buddy yesterday on my podcast, and we were talking about like how Black people kind of deal with some of these kind of things in our society. And we'll just kind of be like, oh, more of this. And then we just try, like, generally speaking, unless you're a person that like really wants the approval of the system, it's kind of like you navigate it. And then when you see that it's like doing what it's doing, it's like, you know what? I'm just gonna pull off to the shoulder and wait for this traffic to be over. And then that's kind of how I feel right now. I'm just like, eh. I'm pulling off to the side. I'm reading a book. I don't have any reason to sit here and go through this, you know. And when I hear about what that guy is doing, I'm just like, mm. I mean, I was like reading and keeping up on it, but it really has gotten too much, and it's at a point where us lamenting over the craziness that this type of person does, it's like we need to be busy working on alternatives.
yeah.
Like crying about what he's doing, he's gonna do it with or without our tears. So it's like I'd say it's like what can we do to create more intentional community? What can we do to kind of get to love each other? What can we do by way of like if we make mistakes and then it's like realizing like, oops, I was wrong. Let me get better and do over, and like not intentionally contributing to all of this madness. That's why I'm trying to do more comedy, write more, and just kind of be support the people who are trying to grow, and then everybody else they can do what they feel like doing, and we'll see.
Yeah, this morning on The View, Whoopi Goldberg was talking about how she had a chance to meet Pope Francis, he had
Oh, I
invited
remember.
100 comedians to go to the
Yeah,
Vatican, and his message was, "We need more people like you out there with a
yeah.
little bit of humor." And
Hmm.
laughter is the best medicine, kind of thing, or the best kind of thing to beef up your prayers. And so
Yeah.
it seems like we're coming full circle from the first time when we talked in episode one about, okay, suddenly there are all these marches, thousands of marches, and
Hmm.
hundreds of thousands, millions of people marching around the country, but to what end?
Hmm.
And so
Hmm.
how can we get people to stick together rather than just trying to come up with a new slogan for the next march,
Yeah.
the
I mean, I
15th.
think it's important for the people who are marching. Like a lot of, I know Black folks aren't trying not to march. Like a lot of us are like, no thanks. And I think that that's great. And I also think that like the people who do, I got some friends that go into the marches and they're saying like, it's peaceful and lovely. Nobody's like, trying to crack anybody upside the head. And I think that that's good because a lot of the people, and I'm not even trying to assign blame per se, it's just a lot of the things that get out of hand is because people sometimes they think it's not their problem. And then once it becomes their problem, then they got something to say. And of those of us for whom it's been our problem for a really long time, like I feel like, yeah, we deserve to rest, man. We need to rest, have like a barbecue, tell some jokes or whatever the case may be. Let you guys, not you, but those guys take care of it. Because we've been getting cracked upside the head and going to jail and getting shot and hung and all this other stuff for liberties. And not to make it too drastic, but like a lot of the folks in like the indigenous community, Black communities, different immigrant groups and stuff like that, like we actually are the embodiments of like the freedoms and the American dream and all these other things because we had to work for it in ways that some people didn't have to. And some people they just think like, I don't believe in the American dream, but I'm just saying that concept that has driven a lot of people, they get into it and like how do you say this? I guess this is the best way I can think of saying it. Freedom is not getting treated like a Black person. Like, like that's what I think some people's ideas of freedom is freedom is not getting treated like a Black person. And they're not getting treated like a Black person and not getting ignored like an indigenous person. Like that's freedom in America. So they like people need us to know what freedom is because they're like, I'm free long as I don't get treated like that person and ignored like that person. But now they're getting treated poorly and being ignored. So now they're like, oh shoot, that's what it's like. This is terrible. I can't believe I had to deal with this for 3 months. This is insane.
That is true, and so they're basically. I've been to two of the marches, and it seems like that's exactly what it is. Is that all of a sudden now the majority or the dominant culture is being dismissed and taken advantage, and now it's time to protest against that. But at the same time, you would think that this would be a good time for allyship with the previously or the historically oppressed. In fact, being known as marginalized, to me, that's almost kind of a dated statement now. It's
Hmm.
more like, oh, finally the dominant culture is starting to catch up to us, and
Right.
and maybe this is the time for them to realize that in 10 years we're going to be having this majority minority
Hmm.
population in our country, and this is what it's going to be like. And it could
Yeah.
be apartheid. I'm hoping that we don't end up with this apartheid kind of government where, as it is now, majority
Hmm.
of elected people are from the dominant culture, even though it's
Right.
become more women, but at the same time as the population becomes more diverse and more oppressed.
If they do this too long, right? it's not in their best interest because folks like they're not there's still folks that they're gonna have to need to work for them, take care of their kids, all these other things. Like you can't uh kind of continue to treat people this sort of way and then want them to be a certain way for you. And more of us start to realize that we have power and we don't really need the permission of institutions. Like somehow I don't understand it because I'm not that type of person, but we surrender our volition so easily to institutions that are nothing more than a name that we conjure up like a false god. And we'll be like, the city. And all of a sudden, you're like, we're paralyzed. We can't do anything to the city. And it's like, the city is just a bunch of people. Like you make up in your brain that is you versus the city. And it's just like, nah, it's just a bunch of people. And if you like, if the people start getting together and finding their shared values and stuff like that, then the city is going to match what people's shared values are. If you say like the government, it's like all these people act like this dude just has like a magic ink pen. They're like he's just writing things into existence, and they're like, we can't do anything. He's got the magic pen, and it's like, yeah, absolutely, we could do something, but at this point in time, it's like we still haven't come to that place where we recognize our power. But everybody has a breaking point, you know. So if the folks want to keep being ridiculous, some people, some of the people that right now on their side is nothing worse than converting somebody who used to be on your side. Because once they get converted, the shame they carried forever being on your side in the first place will be an engine that drives them for to the end of their days. You know what I mean? Like Christianity got spread because the dude who hated Christians got converted to Christianity. Then he's like, I'm gonna convert everybody. Everyone's gonna get converted. But he hated Christianity first. So if these dudes keep messing around, they're gonna end up converting some of these red hat guys. And then those guys are gonna take their hats off and throw them on the ground, and you're gonna know it's gonna be a problem. Because when those guys start taking their hats off, they're gonna be like, "Oh my God, what have we done? We should have never started this." Because these guys are mad. Now there's like, know what? I can't get enough gas for my four-wheeler. You know what I mean? They took my lands that I was hunting my deer on. That's it. I'm off. I'm going crazy. You know, it's gonna be over.
Rattlesnakes are going to start biting each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really starting to happen now. And but a lot of them have kind of still rationalized that things are really better, and we do have to make sacrifices. And I'm a rugged individual, and I can make this on my own because I know that it's for the good of the country. But
Yeah, they're lying.
we'll see.
They're lying.
We'll see.
Like I used to work in a hospital and as a chaplain, and people would be like sick or they get like the cancer or some kind of something going on, and then all of a sudden they turn rational and they know they're on their way out. They used to be trying to. I was like, I'm not Catholic, man. People started trying. It was the Catholic hospital I was working at, and people started trying to ask for penance or like all this sort of things, and it was like when they got aware of their vulnerability, like once they realize how vulnerable they are, they start bargaining with everything. So they just haven't hit the edge of their vulnerability yet. As soon as they hit the edge of their vulnerability, they're gonna be like, they're gonna get mad, and then if they can't do anything but getting mad, then they'll start bargaining, trying to find help and allies and all sorts of things, just like everybody else. Yeah, that's what humans do. We're not that different.
And when you're on your deathbed, the length of time that you have left is a lot different than when you're 12.
Right. Yeah. And when people start realizing like how vulnerable they all are, I mean, we all are. That's why we act crazy. But once we like come in, get intimate with it by like not having a choice, the same people who didn't care about other people, they'll just be like, I get it now. I get it now. It's like Ebenezer Scrooge. There's gonna be a whole bunch of Ebenezer Scrooges running around here talking about I got a chance. We'll see.
And we'll have to all dress up like the Christmas is yet to come. and
Hmm.
confront people with their with their futures and what
Yeah.
should expect based on their past histories.
Yeah. I don't know. It'll happen here and there because I mean, I have yet to meet a person who has snapped into their right mind for one reason or the other, who has not admitted that when they were acting like they didn't know, they really knew. Like, and once they cross that line, they're like, they might have some shame or whatever the case may be. And I'm not saying everybody on the right is wrong and everybody on the left is right, or correct, but there's like an extreme on either end. And when you go to that extreme, there's always a part, I think, a part of the side of our brains that's like, hey, man, I'm going a little too far, you know? And once you wake up to it, you know, that's what it is.
Yeah. Well, back in the day, going too far meant you get your head beat in, and
Yeah.
I think maybe you go to these rallies and a lot of people, baby boomers, who had lived through the '60s, and oh well, the only civil disobedience that was happening was a few dogs off leash and people were jaywalking. It was like the scatter of information. It was about immigration. It was about Doge. It's about this,
Hmm.
about that. It's about everything.
Yeah, I think like just trying to love each other better, and committing to that. That's kind of where I am right now, and I tend to stay that way. It's just like, how can I be a better ambassador of love, so to speak? That's kind of how I'm trying to do it. And some of that means knowing when to walk away and not allowing myself to get so disturbed that I can't see the forest for the trees.
And so maybe next time we can talk about, okay, how can we focus in and how can we do something that's meaningful to, change, as you say, the American way.
Thanks for listening to Black and Tan with Pedro Silva and Alan Ohashi. Join us next time for another insightful episode with stories in the context of a different brand of beer. Black and Tan is a Boulder community media production and available on many of your favorite podcast platforms.